you feel that what you paid is a price which is higher than what you should have paid for in a comparable situation, you cannot go back to custom authorities and demand a refund that's saying you paid excess duty because the value of the import was considered as higher for the purpose of determining the customs duty. So that's both the situations don't work so far as customs are concerned. The next is the ALP under tax law may result in custom valuation risk. So let's look at why that risk is there. So the first is that under the transfer pricing law, when you are conventionally looking at margin determination at the end of the year, and we end up using, let's say, T&M method or entity level margins to determine transfer pricing justification, the annualized entity level approach is not something that the custom authorities will want to accept, because what they would want to look at is, despite the fact that the margins you are able to justify under the transfer pricing, so far as customs are concerned, each transaction is as an independent transaction, and they would want to see that is there a division of duty for each transaction. So there's a difference in how the justification happens. So necessarily, because you have arrived at an ALP price which is justifying a transfer pricing benchmark, is not enough at all for customs purposes. That customs may still want to dispute your valuation if the transaction value for a particular import is different from what is acceptable from a valuation perspective. So that's a key difference over here. Again, it may not be, again, transfer pricing law, it may be possible to justify lower import price based on several criteria. So we have adjustments that are possible to be considered, such as new product launches, considering that the marketing spend is also done by the importer. These arguments are not acceptable to custom authorities. So the adjustments on account of extraneous factors apart from price is something that's not possible from a custom perspective. So that's again a very important aspect that we need to consider, is that when the transaction or the transfer price are being considered, how are you going to factor in this adjustment that you want to volunteer in terms of market entry strategies or marketing spend which is done by the Indian counterpart. All these factors are not something that are agreeable to the custom authorities. Again, as you would see in the case of large multinationals, there are global GP policies which are always there, which are conventionally used, and you could go to a transfer pricing officer with these policies and argue a case saying that we have global transfer pricing policies which are fairly neutral to all the associated enterprises, and therefore the prices should be accepted, whereas under customs they will not accept this policy as a starting point, and they might still want to argue that this policy are geared to reduce the custom duty impact. So this is again a challenge from a custom perspective. We also conventionally see many transactions in the range of royalty payments, cost contribution agreements, limit of management service fees, conventionally in intercompany transactions from AEs, along with set of imports that might happen. And we have documents, agreements for that. We justify each transaction from a transfer pricing perspective, whether there is a merit in paying royalty, whether there is a cost contribution agreements entail a service to the Indian AE, as well as management service, whether benefit is derived by the Indian enterprise. So these are tests which are there for the transfer pricing perspective. Whereas at the customs, there are specific regulations to see that if there is a royalty which is stripped off and paid separately than the price of the imports, if it is relatable to the royalty is relatable to the import, then it is clearly to be added for the custom valuation. So if you see the spate of controversies that are there in custom regulations, I would say 9 out of 10 cases would be only relatable to that, is that the SCB has disputed that the royalty payments are all made for the purpose of imports of goods, and therefore they should be taken into account for the purpose of charging the custom duty. And of course, the courts would have held that the royalty agreement don't actually have an association with imports. So the largest controversy in the custom landscape is more to do with royalty payments, because the customs have always wanted to argue to say that the royalty is nothing but a separate consideration for the purpose of import. So that's the largest set of controversies under the custom regulations. We see it differently from a transfer pricing perspective. So we see a transaction-based approach to see what is the purpose of payment of royalty and whether the royalty is at an arm's length margin that's been rate that is being paid. So that's our perspective from a transfer pricing perspective. Perspective for transfer pricing and customs are very different from for these transactions. That's the key differentiation. Again, flavor of the season, the APAs which we all talk about, 145 last year, 255 this year, some resolved, lots of excitement that APAs will bring a big relief to the taxpayers in India from a transfer pricing controversy. APAs will resolve the transfer pricing dispute, but it would do nothing for the customs pain that you might have. So, despite the fact that APAs address and de-risk your transfer pricing strategy, it will have nothing to do with your custom import. So they will still want to keep that. They would not accept APA and let you go off if there is an undervaluation of goods in your case. So that's the uncertainty regarding custom valuation may still persist in your case. So that's the big difference out there. Look at double taxation as the next aspect. Is no provision for tax refund under either laws in case adjustments are made in the other law. That's another pain area, is that because both the laws are working in contradiction to each other, and if you end up paying a higher tax in one domain, that's in transfer pricing or customs, you cannot get a set off against each other. That's a big issue out here, is that as you try to please both the authorities, it will come at your cost. There's going to be double taxation, is that you also end up paying higher income tax, you'll also end up paying higher custom duty if you want to please both the authorities. So that's a key issue out here. Sorry? Yeah, so yes, of course, Yatin has very rightly mentioned is that transfer pricing itself has embedded, double taxation embedded inside the regulation itself, and on top of it, there's another aspect that opens up on customs. So you have multiple complexities in terms of double taxation. So may I call it that it could be triple taxation in that case. So that's the kind of situation that you have double taxation. Again, the hardship to the taxpayer doesn't end there. So we have different methodologies to look at. Documentation requirement for transfer pricing is quite different from what the expectation of the custom authorities would be there. The use of comparable is again a challenge. Asymmetrical information availability is always a gap that is there, is that we do not get sound comparables which are uncontrolled, so that's always been a big challenge. The timing of the valuation audit is again disparate. The customs, as we discussed earlier, is that the customs valuation happens at the time of imports, whereas transfer pricing study and even the audit happens much later, maybe after 2 or 3 years. So there's a big time gap between the two situations which are there. The assessment audit provision again are very disparate. So, but you need to balance them. You have to leave both the lines, put it together. And due to differences in compliance requirement under two laws, maintenance of records increase the cost of administration to the taxpayer. So, unending amount of compliances for the taxpayer to look at under both the regulation is that if you are not got tired of looking at transfer pricing documentation and compliances, you have on top of it to look at how do you justify all these transactions again from a custom perspective, and that's a big challenge for the importer. And finally, there are no provisions for joint price setting and evaluation of transfer pricing between transfer pricing and customs available. So both authorities don't work together. Therefore, you cannot come up to a price which is common to both. There is no price setting that's available jointly that both will be happy with the price that you set for yourself. So there is a median price that you discover is always going to be a trial and error kind of situation. That's something that you have to live with a situation like that. Is that if you are going to be very conservative in your transfer pricing, expect that you got a custom challenge over there. So if you're going to have a ALP which is going to be much lower than the price actually that you paid for, then there is a transfer pricing risk associated with that kind of a policy framework. So there is no clear answer to this particular situation. So that's the spectrum of how would I say the intensity of the issues that are there for transfer pricing and custom direct together. So how do we look at achieving price certainty? That's the common question that would come up at the end of discussion, is that can we as a taxpayer look at any kind of certainty that we can mitigate risk over here? And of course, advanced pricing agreements is something that we all understand is probably alleviate ourselves from a transfer pricing risk going forward. So as I said, it's a flavor of the season. So clearly there is a possibility that we could look at APA as a starting point, and opposed to that, under the custom duty, there's an advance ruling possible as well. But would this go together and would you arrive at the same pricing? Again, the answer is no. So, despite the fact that there's a certainty which is built in both the regulations, they don't work together, and therefore you may have an APA which is in your favor, APA which settles transfer pricing controversy. You still have the risk of not having a favorable advance ruling on customs. So, there is a challenge that ensues on both the accounts. So all you can say is that if you have such a controversial situation, all the best, because you may not be able to match both the, and how would I satisfy both the sides of the regulators. Now let's look at some of the Indian jurisprudence on the subject. So we have a spate of decisions on transfer pricing which relate to imports. And if you see the case of Panasonic India against Sadia Pharmaceuticals and Push Lubricants, all of them have taken into account where the taxpayer has gone back saying we have the prices of imports have been accepted by the custom authorities and therefore they should be also acceptable under the transfer pricing regulations. And unilaterally everywhere the tribunal has held that what is the test under transfer pricing is the arm's length price, and just because you have a price that is accepted by customs is not an arm's length price so far as customs transfer pricing is concerned. So that's what these decisions have said. So in the case of Panasonic, rejected the taxpayer's reliance on the valuation done by SVD. Again in Sadia Pharmaceuticals, the taxpayer's contention that import prices were being accepted by custom authorities should be accepted was rejected. And in the case of Push Lubricants, the value of raw materials imports accepted by custom authority could not be taken as arm's length price. So it's universally accepted by the tribunal is that custom authorities valuation is not something that would go down as ALP. So you are still left loose on those particular situations as far as the transfer pricing rulings are concerned. As I mentioned at the starting point is that transfer pricing succeeds the customs controversy because the customs is a transactional duty which is paid at the time of imports, and transfer pricing gets discovered 2 or 3 years later. So you have more controversy in transfer pricing as opposed to customs, because if you have violated something in customs, the goods would be confiscated and there probably would have no international transaction to speak of. So that's the practical situation that unfolds over here. Let's look at some more decisions over here. So we have another decision which is Mobis India Limited versus DCIT. In this case, the tribunal held that the valuation made by custom authorities on import of raw materials for purpose of levy of custom duty cannot be considered as a comparable. The purpose of valuation by the custom authority will determine undervaluation, which is by very its nature would not fit with the scheme of transfer pricing analysis under the Income Tax Act. So I think that's the crux of the whole situation, is that the custom authorities are concerned with undervaluation, and by its very nature does not fit with the scheme of transfer pricing, which wants to look at arm's length price. So this is one of the direct observation of the tribunal which is most relevant for us to understand the controversy between transfer pricing and customs regulations. However, interestingly, in the case of Tildor Iceland, the tribunal upheld the taxpayer's reliance on a database maintained by TIP software for comparison of prices of basmati rice, as it consisted of information publicly available with the customs department. So the reliance placed by the taxpayer on the data which was gathered by the customs authorities was acceptable for the purpose of benchmarking in this particular case. And I am only referring to the data, I am not referring to the valuation. And lastly, there is a if you flip this side, but this particular case in Coastal Energy Private Limited versus DCIT, the tribunal held that the taxpayer has no locus standi to question the credibility of customs data relied upon by the TPO. Custom authority assigned values to imported goods on the basis of scientifically formulated methods and is not an arbitrary exercise. So this is a reverse situation where the TPO wanted to rely on the customs authority's valuation, whereas the taxpayer was disputing this particular valuation of relying on customs authorities. And the tribunal held that no, that's not the case, because the custom authorities also have relied on the pricing on certain data which is there, so that should be used. This contrary to the previous judgments in a sense is that in this particular situation, the TPO argued against the taxpayer to say that the custom authority's price should be accepted. So it's not that there is a one-size-fits-all kind of situation. It's more fact-specific that you might want to look at in terms of how would you look at the valuation of imports. So that's the spectrum of things on the jurisprudence on the subject. So where are we going on this particular subject globally? Is some convergence happening here or not? So the convergence is something that is increased interaction between customs and transfer pricing authorities is something many countries have initiated in their own jurisdictions. So various governments have taken and issued guidelines to resolve the customs and TP conflicts. So you have USA, Australia, Canada, Chile, France, etc. They come up with some kind of guidelines to meet with this imbalance of two regulations to find out what should be the best offering for the taxpayer. But of course, the review of TP studies, advanced pricing agreement, arrangements and TP documentation for determining custom valuation is also very relevant. So that's to say that there is a convergence happening. There is a convergence happening in terms of the documentation that you do for TP is also relevant to an extent for the custom valuation. That's the global initiative on convergence that's happening. Again, World Customs Organization OECD Conference on TP and Custom Valuation that was held in Brussels in 2007, followed by a focus group in October 2007, is set about addressing this particular issue of convergence. So if you look at what happens in Australia, the Australian Custom Authorities have published a practice statement to provide guidance to custom staff and industry stakeholders on how the valuation would be considered in the light of transfer buying arrangements. And there are changes that are being recommended to facilitate transfer buying arrangements to allow a refund if there is an overpayment of custom duty by reasons of a downward adjustment. So there is a bit of conversion happening in Australia is that in case if there is a higher payment of taxes and then you can ask for a refund from a custom perspective. So there's a possibility that's been embedded in the legislation in Australia. Again, in USA, the custom authorities have shown some willingness to, in certain circumstances, to consider multinational importers, IRS-approved APAs, transfer pricing studies, and other tax-related pricing strategies practices in establishing the custom valuation of imported goods. So, in USA also, you will find some conversion happening, and they are willing to entertain refund of duty if you are able to demonstrate there is a downward adjustment required for the purpose of transfer pricing. So, in US and Australia, there have some conversion happening, but it's not in a full scheme of things that there are regulations available that you can fall back on. Now let's come to India after this. So what's happening in India? India, there was a formation of a joint working group between the transfer pricing authorities and the customs. So there was a CBC circular dated May 8, 2007, circular number 20/2007, essentially consisting of members from both the sides. So there was a group which was co-chaired by the member of Income Tax Department as well as CBDT member, again was part of this. And essentially there's a convergence in terms of cooperation between the two departments. So there's a two-tier cooperation through recommended bi-monthly or 6-monthly joint meetings, training programs which are common for both the offices, sharing of related party information and on need-to-know basis, and exchange of information on specific cases. So this convergence that you can see in India is more specific and geared towards garnering more revenue for both the departments. It was not the case of taxpayer to say that the convergence was to benefit the taxpayer to say that can you find a median that is acceptable to both the parties. That was not the intention. The intention for this convergence was purely for both the department to find out how they can collect more revenue. So that was the perspective in front of this particular group. So taxpayer is not in the spectrum of this conversion process. There's only two regulators trying to come together. Taxpayer is still outside the box. He has to fend for himself. So with this, my presentation on the customs part is concluded, and there are, of course, there are some extension of the presentation in terms of coverage of the applicability of transfer pricing to section 10AA. Again, something that you would have practiced practically is that the balance is again very delicate, is that there is no tax holiday available on more than ordinary profits under transfer pricing, which confirms in a sense to what the customer would want to argue. And application of LP principle prescribed in Indian TP regulations is now also applicable to the domestic transfer pricing. And there's a fine balance required between the transfer pricing and tax holiday provisions that you would need to meet with. So it is not good enough to justify an arm's length price. Also, if you make more than ordinary profits, you have a limitation of the exemption available in that particular section. And so these are some of the issues with regard to applicability of transfer pricing to section 10AA. So that's the perspective. The next item is, which again, how relevant is this transfer pricing from the purpose of, from the perspective of, is it enter the boardroom as yet another transfer pricing, or is it confined to tax practitioners? So is corporate governance impacted because of the transfer pricing controversies? And we all know that transfer pricing has every year shown remarkable amount of adjustment being made to income. So we have figures which are seeming unearthly in terms of 40,000 crores, 45,000 crores in FY 11-12, which amounted to 70,000 crores in FY 12-13, again 60,000 crores in 13-14. They're big numbers, and clearly with these kind of numbers, it cannot not enter the boardroom. So effectively speaking, corporate governance, which has to protect the interests of the shareholders, can they ignore this particular aspect, that is transfer pricing? And the answer is clearly no. Effectively speaking, transfer pricing controversies have entered the boardroom and clearly impacting the corporate governance in that process. So the uncertainty that is bringing, which is already there on the table, the limited guidelines, contradictory rulings by Indian courts, all this clearly compound the matters for sound corporate governance on limiting the exposure to transfer pricing risk. As we see significant adjustments made by the TPOs on account of share valuation, corporate guarantees, market intangibles, there's some controversies which are clearly out of the box. So if you, I'm sure you would have already seen share valuation as a controversy, and it defies logic how this kind of adjustments are being made from the perspective. There is no income, and despite that, you have adjustments which are running into a few thousand crores. But that's the way transfer pricing is practiced in India by the regulators, and that's where we have to live. And therefore, the board of directors or the corporate governance has to be mindful of these situations to understand how do you deal with that as you go forward. So these transactions that are looking at share valuation, corporate guarantees, marketing intangibles, despite the fact there are contradictory rulings, are clearly still something that is worthy of notice for corporate governance. So which are the pressure points that which are relevant from a corporate governance perspective? Clearly, the legal position and ensuring that the aligned with Indian laws is something that is mandated. Is that if the company is taking any positions which are in contra the legal positions that are emerging, there is a transfer pricing risk over here. So I'm not trying to canvass that necessarily there is a transfer pricing adjustment should or should not be required. The question is there a transfer pricing risk? That's, I think, is the largest part that one would need to look at. Is that it does not necessarily mean that there is a how would I say, there's a transfer pricing adjustment called for, but what is most important is to understand the transfer pricing risk, which is different in a sense. Also, the methods that are applicable for transfer pricing, and there are various methods. There are some methods which are appropriate. All these need to be understood by the board of directors or practice corporate governance for that matter. Ensuring documentation requirements are strictly and completely met with, and I think that's one of the largest reasons why some of the transfer pricing controversy have ensued is on account of less than adequate documentation that is being maintained by the taxpayers. So that's something, again, is a very important aspect that need to be understood. Real-time basis update of the judicial legislative developments happening in India is another factor. What was good before 3 years is not good today, as we all understand, is that new set of controversies keep surfacing. Tax department keeps discovering new set of issues that were not there existing before, say, 1 or 2 years now. Corporate guarantees, one such aspect. Marketing intangibles, we've seen controversies coming up in the last few years, which are not there in the last 10 years, if I put it that way. So the boards need to be mindful of the new controversies that are coming up, which would impact them. There is BEPS that is now being canvassed, that is going to be probably in a year's time. We'll see more action happening over there. There are 15 subjects identified, and some of these subjects would clearly impact transactions between related associated enterprises. So if you are not understanding, or as a part of the board of directors, the impact of this developments on your transfer prices or your transfer pricing risk, you're taking a big risk over here from perspective of taxes. Finally, ensuring timeliness and completeness in compliances is also very important. Transfer pricing demands significant compliance with the taxpayer in terms of documentation as well as compliance at a time of filing returns and so on and so forth. And of course, the board of directors must be aware of what are these compliance requirements. And finally, of course, the penal consequences are also fairly stringent. Again, they need to be made aware of for this purpose. And please be aware is that all the people on the board of directors are not necessarily chartered accountant and tax practitioners. So for a average director on the board of a company, he does not understand the consequences of transfer pricing as we understand as practitioners. So this communication is very important from the perspective of how do you have a sound corporate governance built inside a company, which is very important. So governing board should increasingly take responsibility of identification, quantification and management of transfer pricing risk from a corporate governance perspective. So they need to identify material intergroup transactions, especially off-balance sheet items. It's not necessary that you have, and I think we all know that every international transaction is not there on the financial statement. There are transactions which are off the balance sheet or off the financial statement which also are impacted. So that also something that the board of directors, the governing boards must understand and be mindful of. Ensure there is a coordination among cross functions such as operations and finance so that the pricing adjustments are appropriately documented in intercompany agreements. And you will see multinationals practice transfer pricing and the pricing of products in a very different manner. Is that there are several very large multinationals that I've had the occasion to speak with, and they mentioned is that when we come to pricing of products, there is a first requirement it has to be cleared by the transfer pricing team globally before the price is set in every jurisdiction. So which are very important aspects. All those who don't understand this part of pricing clearly fall short of it and end up having controversies ensuing at a later point of time. So if the functions in a company, which is a marketing function and the sales function, do not align with the finance and tax function, you are asking for a big risk at a later point of time. So that's something boards need to the governing board need to understand very well. Also look at conducting impact analysis of potential transfer pricing risk on periodic basis to itemize two things. One is where it leads to double taxation, which also means increasing the effective tax rate, which is always a matter of great concern for tax for multinationals. I think the whole world, if I say the multinational is driven by the effective tax rates, so they're all struggling to find out how do you globally reduce the effective tax rate. So, but if that is the focus of attention, it's equally important to understand the transfer pricing risk that you would have. So, impact analysis on periodic basis is clearly a very important aspect for the strategy purposes. Reporting and justifying transactions that do not meet with arm's length price of the board. So there has to be a mechanism that has to be built inside to discover transactions that don't meet arm's length price, which potentially bring risk to the company. So that's something that again is an important aspect. And because of the documentation for scheduled disclosures in terms of alignment with cost audit rules, Companies Act 2013, AS 18 issued by the SEI, tax audit report disclosures. So transfer pricing documentation would have an impact on all these compliances and requirements under cost audit and the financial statement certification and so on and so forth. Again, proactive approach for amendments in the legislation on introduction of the new DPC 2013. So there is no end to it. DPC 2013, BEPS, and all of that. So there is a lot of homework to do for board of directors to ensure that the risk is minimized at an entity level. And of course, especially to minimize the transfer pricing risk, fall back on EPS and safe harbor for better certainty is something that is always canvassed for. So these are some of the issues that should stand focus for the corporate governance and for the board of directors. So that's the spectrum of things that are now necessary. So in other words, if I may just summarize, is that transfer pricing is not something that is confined to taxpayers and tax practitioners. It is very much a relevant issue for business at large. Companies that do not take into account and cognizance of this controversy